There's a little confusion about how we use integers. I just want to clear that up. Capital I integers work a little funny, just like capital S strings. The reason why I'm emphasizing capital I, it's as opposed to the int value, which is a primitive, something that's funny in Java. Not many languages in the third generation, Python, Ruby, etc., use primitives. Everything gets instantiated, and when you create something, it doesn't just live in stack memory. It instead runs a constructor automatically and establishes itself in the heap memory. That means that the little variable that you have is actually storing a reference to something else. And so if I change what this is, I'm not actually changing. If I set it equal to y, for instance, what I'm doing now is setting both of those equal to the same thing. They point to the same object over in heap memory, and so they are both linked now. And that's an important thing to understand, the difference between a primitive and an instance, and that uses a reference, as opposed to a primitive that lives entirely in stack memory. Strings are like this. So I can say string, something is equal to something, and notice I don't run a constructor. I mean, normally, if I'm making an object, I have to run new and with the type of object it is, and then I pass something to it. And so there I go, and lo and behold, that works. But because we use these things so often, the creators of Java have allowed us to shortcut that and just pass the literal object to this, and it'll set it up. Just like how I can pass a literal integer into an integer wrapper, meaning that it takes a primitive and wraps a bunch of tools around it. And it runs the constructor implicitly. I don't have to say it. It just does it by itself. Notice this is the way that we used to have to create an integer, and now that's being phased out, which is cool because this makes a lot more sense. I just set it equal to this primitive object here, this literal integer, and instantiate yourself and create a link to it in heap memory right here and set it up as 5. So a lot of you were doing x dot, int value and trying to convert it back to a primitive in order to compare it. You don't need to do that because these things are run implicitly. That means they're run automatically. And so I can just do that, and if I run it, as you can see, it says false. It says it properly computes these things, so it's really handy. Just to further illustrate this point, imagine I instantiate an array list here, instantiating because I'm running a constructor, and y, I'm doing the same thing, and now I see, are they equal to each other? No, they're not. And then I set y equal to that. Now they're pointing to the same thing. You can see, yeah, true, they are equal to each other. So now they're aliases. They're both nicknames of the same thing. And if I see the size of the other one, y, I see that it's 1.